Now with the major automakers restructured, the Auto Task Force may now need to really turn its attention to the auto parts suppliers. Michael Robinet is the Vice President of Global Vehicle Forecasts at CSM Worldwide, a consulting firm that did research for the task force, and he joins us from our Detroit newsroom with what's next for the industry. Michael, good to have you back on Bloomberg. Good morning.
Good day.
First, let me start with you. I mean, how does the stepping down of Steve Ratner impact the workings, if at all, of the Auto Task Force, especially when it comes to those auto parts guys?
Well, the task force will be looking at the state of the industry. Obviously, they've got substantial investments they have to oversee. The next major hurdle, you are very correct, is the supply base. Detroit and other parts of the Midwest is really on tenterhooks right now because we really produce very few vehicles in the second quarter. You don't produce vehicles, you don't gain any revenue, and the problem is that revenue is 60 days later when it comes in your door. So it's going to be a really, really dry summer in Detroit in terms of revenue on the supplier side.
Michael, some of the press reports talked about, though, the government, by making this change or with Ratner stepping down, that the government's kind of easing into a more passive role when it comes to the auto industry. If so, that to me potentially spells trouble for the auto parts guys. Does it, in your view?
Well, certainly, I think the task force is looking ahead and saying, okay, now the vehicle manufacturers in the form of at least Chrysler and General Motors are going to start some of their plants back up to replenish those inventories, which have really been drained for the first half of the year. And that's going to be somewhat good news for the supply base. But as I mentioned, we've got a really suspect 2 or 3 months where there's that disconnect between producing vehicles and getting the revenue for the parts that they've supplied. So it's still going to be a pretty dicey time for the third quarter in terms of the automotive industry here at least in the U.S. and Canada.
Michael, it's Mark Crumpton with Carol. You two mentioned the part suppliers. Can you give our viewers a sense of how critical they are, not just to the job that they do, but how critical they are in the communities where they are based?
Oh, they're absolutely critical. There's this mindset, still this mindset that we hear that, well, if I can't get a suspension component from this supplier, I'll just go next door to his or her competitor and get it from them. That world doesn't exist. Really, you have very, very specialized supply, and in fact, many of these suppliers are interlinked. So, for instance, if Ford is doing well and they're also supplying Chrysler, and Chrysler is still a major part of their supply and also of their revenue, that's a major problem.
Right.
Many of these suppliers are in the Midwest. They're interlinked in many of the towns, so obviously it affects state budgets, municipal budgets. It's got a crescendo all the way down.
So, all right. So, Michael, should we anticipate more bankruptcies by the auto parts guys? I mean, we've already had Lear filing last week. Visteon's in bankruptcy. Many others you could easily describe as being strapped. What's your outlook here?
I think there's no doubt. Certainly, we look at the suppliers and we provide data and analysis to them, but not necessarily on the financial side. But it doesn't take much of an analyst to really see that there's going to be still some substantial issues. We had JL French, which is a major caster, really decided to go to Chapter 11. Many others that are especially capital-driven, right, that have really difficulties on the credit and the capital side are really strangled right now.
Michael, 5 seconds. Do they need government assistance to get through this? Should they have it? Quickly.
It would be really nice if we could get some government assistance for these suppliers.
All right, going to leave it on that note. Michael, thank you so much. Michael Robinet of CSM Worldwide.